Hi everybody, so hopefully this time this is going to work, because every time I click on it keeps saying clicking onto something else, so I do apologise for being a few minutes late. So here we go. Yes, we seem to be working now. So apologies for being a bit late, just having some technical issues there. So I just want to talk to you today about how people with preference for seeing the bigger picture versus those who like detail are dealing with the COVID crisis. And particularly in this time, we tend to focus on, if you do a Google search about personality types, it tends to be all based around the introversion preference and the extroversion preference. And this is where we can get people just very much focused on these areas of your personality, but we're not just about being extroverts and being introverts. So let's talk a bit more in detail and talk about how we can gain balance and fulfillment when we have different personality types. And if you haven't got this month's magazine, there's a magazine here, so it sort of links to some of the things that have been discussed there. And I'm Haulwen Nicholas. I'm the Magical Mojo coach, and I'm one of Psychology's ambassadors. So let's talk about bigger picture preference and detail preference. We're made of different complex parts, with each of us having a unique preference for different aspects of our life, whether that's gathering information, whether it's how we interact with the world around us, and all of those different ways that we deal with that information makes us deal and react with them in different ways. This really becomes apparent in times of stress, and you can see people exhibiting certain behaviours to help them to feel more in control. So today what we're talking about is the information you prefer to gather and trust. And at the moment we have an awful lot of information to process, and we are in an information age where we have, we basically have our encyclopedias at our fingertips, and we really do need to think about how do we make sure that we don't have information overload, and how do we make sure that we take in the information that's right for us in a way that we find is something that we can trust and we can interpret, that makes it valuable for us personally and our personal personality types. So firstly, what are you? Are you a detail person or are you a big picture person? In Myers Briggs, these are called sensing and intuition, but I'm just going to call it detail and big picture here, just to make it a bit easier for people to understand. So for those of you who like the detail, you focus on what is real, what is observable. You value practical applications, factual and concrete information, noticing the detail. You'll note and remember specifics, and you'll enjoy being in the present and want more information to be accurate. You trust direct experience. That's very, very important to you. And these are the people who, let's take a flat pack, and you're the ones who read the instructions, get on and put it up as instructed, checking all the parts are present and all the tools are present. So think about yourself. Are you generally attuned to practical realities and highly observant? Would you rather focus on what's real, actual and familiar? So in this pandemic, you just want to say, just tell me the pandemic facts, skip the editorials please, I just want to know the facts. And do others describe you as realistic, factual and concrete? Does that sound familiar to you? Or are you a person with a preference for the bigger picture? Focus on what could be. Focus on the picture of possibilities. Value imaginative insights. Are abstract and theoretical in the approach to gathering information. You see patterns and meaning. Enjoy anticipating the future. You're actually quite stimulated by ambiguity and trust in inspiring ideas. So these are the ones, you'll recognise these people who get the flat pack furniture and may leave it there for a while and think I'll do it, in the future, and then put it together whilst only glancing at the instructions but looking to see if it matches the picture on the front of the box. that sound familiar to any of you? So there's some questions for you. Are you more inclined to focus on the big picture, relationships, future possibilities? Do you tend to want the big picture information in the news conferences? You tell me what I need to know. I don't need the detail. Just give me a broad overview of what I need to be doing with this pandemic. Do others describe you as imaginative, verbally creative, intuitive? The thing is, particularly with these preferences, whichever preference you are, you'll find you are a bit of both. And what happens is that we start with a preference. Some of you will start with the detail and go to the big picture, and then back to the detail. And some of you will start with the big picture, check the detail, and back to the big picture. And you'll do it in a different time frame. So some of you will do it really quickly and won't even notice. So when you're answering these questions, thinking, well, I do all of that, and that's fine. We learn, from doing things like putting together a piece of furniture and finding actually if you just look at the picture, it didn't go together quite right. So actually I want to now follow the instructions. But then somebody might, those with the detail were like, oh, actually, I wanted it to look more like the picture. So they do the instructions and then look at the picture. And this is where we these tend to get quite close when people are doing their personality types on these particular areas, because you learn how to do the other one. These are preferences. You're not fixed in a box. It's what your preferred type is. So how do these aspects of your personality impact how you react during the COVID crisis? So if you're more of a detail-oriented personality type, you tend to perform better when you're given outcome-focused, research-oriented tasks. So when you look at the information that you're getting from the media, social media, the press, from the government news conferences, wherever you are, you need steady access to coronavirus-related information. That way you can make your own inferences and judgment about this crisis. You want to be able to have that detail. You want to be able to read that information and go, oh, right, okay, now, and read that information and say, right, okay, now I can make my own judgment. And for people like yourselves, then you'll be saying, right, now based on these judgments, this is what I believe I can and can't do. The big picture personality types might be a bit of greater risk of panic, especially when cut off from in-person interactions with their peers. This is why it's very important to remember that social distance doesn't mean social disconnecting. We can use interactions with social media. We can use things such as Facebook, or we can use Messenger or text messages or phone calls. It's funny how everyone's forgotten to pick up the phone lately and just talk to people. And so you could be somebody who's actually big picture but still be an introvert, but you will still need to have that interaction with people at your pace and at your level. It's because you need to gain from their intuitive, creative ideas while providing them with accurate and verified information. So we want that accurate and verified information. If you're this sort of person, you want to listen in and get those intuitive, creative ideas so that you can think through and understand how this pandemic is actually affecting you. But I think the thing that you have to be careful of as well is information overload. So if you've got a preference for detail, you might need to stop and take a step back, because you could actually be causing yourself to panic a bit as well, because you're going into so much of the detail. You might focus on the big picture, what's important to help you to avoid getting lost in the details, and to ensure that you keep in touch with other people and ask for their take on the situation. It's really important just to, talk it through with other people or how they are interpreting things. So it's about not obsessing about getting every little thing right, or for people with a preference for detail, you're now at home, you might be trying to have a perfect home working environment. So we're saying, well, I've got to so focused on making your home environment perfect, because you're now working in these new conditions, that you're actually not getting anything done, because you're saying, well, actually, no, I want that there on my desk, I want this here, because if I do it this way, then I'll be more productive. And this is where you can potentially get lost in that detail. You could get lost in the detail of the coronavirus reporting. And this is where you need to just have that balance. If you have a big picture preference, you're You need to stop going through all the possibilities. You tend to be looking at the future, so you're thinking, well, what's the possibility for the future? What we're going to be happening here? You'll be making your own inferences from the information and data that you've been given. Oh, somebody's just said about a vaccine. That's great. So I think then that we'll be all okay, in this time period, or January, May, whatever. Oh, everything's going to be fine by then. And you'll be just thinking about the future so much that you're not grounded in yourself in the moment or the present. And when we're in a crisis, it's really, really important that we ground ourselves in the moment or the present. Try one thing at a time and stick to it. So if you're working from home, it can be easy to skip away around from one idea to another idea, and be thinking, well, I could do this, I could do this. And you might be thinking, it gives you so much time to think. You'll be thinking so much about the future that you're not focusing on what you could be doing now for you, and you could be forgetting things which are important to do now. So be kind to you, be kind to others, and be kind to yourself in this particular time. Those of you with a detail-oriented preference may also find yourselves becoming obsessed with the minutiae of social distancing rules. You might be, as I mentioned before, worrying about the detail of your desk and your home working environment, to the point that you're obsessing about it because you're not getting outside your four walls very much, perhaps only to the shops or for a walk. So you're obsessing about, well, that curtain rail's out, or that picture's out, or that's not quite the right shade that I wanted, or all these sort of things could start becoming quite obsessive for you. It could also be worrying obsessively about, snacking too much or missing exercise. And this is happening to lots of us at the moment, that we're not being able to do the activities that we used to do. And those with the detail-oriented preference known as sensing in Myers Briggs may be finding that they're having that obsessiveness about what they need to be doing and what they should be doing. And that's just something to be careful of. So, as I mentioned before, maintaining contact with others is a good way to keep in touch with the real world and stop yourself getting focused on your four walls and obsessing about your four walls. For those of you with the big picture preference, you can tend to overcomplicate things. So you need to be brought back down to earth. You need to get together with someone perhaps with more of a detail-oriented preference so that you can balance your viewpoints. People with the big picture preference could potentially be a bit more blasé about the whole thing, saying it's okay. I've just read the details on the top there. I don't need to go into the detail of the rules and regulations. And they may miss what they're actually supposed to be doing. So they might be the ones who you are inadvertently flaunting the rules, which could then be getting on the nerves of the people who have gone into the details. Well, if you read it and read the detail, you'll see what you should be doing. So how come you haven't seen that? And this is where it's really, really important for organisations and governments to make sure that any information they're putting out there is actually put in a couple of formats. So ensuring that there's enough detail in the top level that everybody knows what they're doing, and that so that those people who are more big picture and are never going to read past the headlines are going to know what instructions they have. This links in with some of your other preferences, like so if you've got a preference for being visual or auditory or kinesthetic, which is NLP side of things, then you have to make sure that we've got these messages coming through right to people. People with the detailed orientation will probably have more questions. They'll be wanting to look at it from different viewpoints, as I've mentioned before. And that obsessing about the detail is something that as organisations and the media need to make sure that it's displayed in a way that they can actually take it and look at it objectively. It's really, really important that we do that. So I'm wondering how many of you are finding that, because you're in your four walls, you're obsessing. Are you finding that living with some of the people in your household is driving you crazy? Because what you're finding is that you're really obsessing about wanting your home in a certain way because you're in it all the time and you want things done like this. And, you know, I was talking to somebody today who said about someone who is obsesses about the gap in the curtains. And because they're now stuck in the house all day, and in this case this person is bedbound, and can't have an operation that they should do, they're now obsessing about the gap in the curtain because they've got nothing else to focus on. So it's really important then with those situations that the people around them then give them something else to focus on, otherwise they will start obsessing. And when they start obsessing, that can become quite detrimental for their health and well-being. So this is where people with a big picture preference need to help those people with the detail preference. And the big picture preference people can, can be so focused on the future, as I mentioned, that they're not recognising the impact they're having on the people in the present. They need to understand that some people need to process the detail in a completely different way. So if you're one of those big picture people, you're not going to understand why people are obsessing about all this detail about all of the information that's out there. You're not reading the articles in detail. Your view is, I'll get given the information, I will look through it, I'll determine if I think it's right or wrong for me, but you're not obsessing about it. But you could also find that you're feeling a bit lost because then you're seeing other people and you're going, oh, should I be doing that? Should I not be doing that? How do I do that? The other dangerous thing as well is when you're a big picture preference is that you actually then go into the detail and you find going into the detail exhausting. So you find that you've got to go into the detail because of your role and or because now that you're working from home, you're having to do your role slightly differently, and you're finding it exhausting. And you're suddenly finding that you're doing a role or you're doing work or you're having to interpret information that you wouldn't normally do because you're having to work from home and you're not being able to go into a room and brainstorm in the same way. So this is important, even if you're an introverted intuitive, you need to just check that you are actually getting the stimulus and interaction with other people to talk through your ideas and be creative. Because actually just being on your own can make you obsess on detail, which exhausts you and tires you out. Now, I'm a big picture person, and I know that at the moment I work from home a lot anyway, but I'm having to be careful because I know that I'm doing a lot of detail-oriented work. And normally I would be talking some of that through, even though I'm an introvert, and so it is exhausting. So it's to make sure that you're actually pulling yourself out of it to look at it in a way that you need to. Now remember that all of us will do detail and all of us will do big picture. So some of you will be in between. You won't be obsessing and you won't be potentially looking so far in the future that you're not looking at the present. So you might be able to get that balance, but you might be starting to see where you could be obsessing. You know what I mean? Being obsessive. And or you might see that you're focused so much on the future you're not focused on the present. At the moment we've got a lot of uncertainty in the world, and that also means with jobs, with the COVID crisis, what's happening with doctor's appointments, with medical appointments, with can you see your family or not. And if we start obsessing about that detail, then it can be very, very detrimental to our health and well-being. Link up with somebody who's more of a big picture person, so to pull you in and to check on you and keep you talking and get you back in the real world. That's really, really important. And the intuitive types, remember, you need to be talking to some of those sensing, detailed people just to give you the facts and figures and information in a way that's right for you to be able to, for you to understand what's happening in the present and be in the present. If you're a future thinking person, this is a really difficult time as well, because you've probably got plans for the future. You're thinking, normally you've got your next big idea, you're brainstorming, you're saying, oh right, I'm planning 2021. and I want to think about what's going to be happening in 21, and here's some great ideas, and then going, oh, but I don't actually know if I can do it. Can I actually be there? I've seen this with people planning events, and you can see the detail people saying, well, actually, I don't think you're going to have an event next year because based on this, this and this and this, we're recommendations that, let's move it back a couple of months because we haven't got the certainty that that's going to be able to happen. So let's focus on the present and let's wait until we have the facts and information to make the decision. And those with the big picture preference are saying, it's fine. Everything's going to be all right. We're thinking, we just got to think about the future. We need to keep going. We need to keep getting things in place. And then having the reality of, oh gosh, now we've got some facts have come through, and that's now changed what's happening. So it makes it very, very difficult for you in whichever preference you are. And I know I've duplicated a couple of things because these aren't preferences that people talk about that much, to get you really thinking about, how these are impacting you. Getting you really thinking about, yes, you are thinking too far in the future, and you've got to bring yourself into the present, and that's not something that you naturally do. You naturally want to be saying now, oh, I'm planning 2021. Well, you can't, and that can be quite disturbing because you don't know. And not knowing and just focusing on the here and now, it can be very, very challenging for people with that big picture preference. Recognise it. Take some time out and journal on your feelings. Talk it through with a friend who understands. Draw it, paint it. Find a way to grasp how you deal with not being able to look at your future in the way that you normally do. And for the sensing types, again, if you're finding you're obsessing, talk to somebody. Go for a walk outside. Stop being inside your four walls. Get some fresh air. When you can, try and get out and interact with people. Keep in touch with the real world. It's very, very easy to just get into the minutiae of the regulations and watching everybody else with the regulations and saying, well, they're not doing it and they're not keeping their distance. Everybody's interpreting it in a different way. Focus on you. Don't focus on anybody else, and focus on the here and now. Keep in touch with the real world by speaking to other people, going out, seeing the bigger picture. It's a really, really difficult time for everybody. It's all about self-care and wellness. For those with a sensing preference, don't worry if you're snacking far too much or if you're missing exercise. Don't start worrying and obsessing about it. We need to give ourselves a break. It's fine. I know I put weight on in the COVID crisis, and I was looking at it the other day and I thought, you know what? There's so much going on in my life. I'm just going to enjoy the present, which for somebody who thinks about the future quite a lot, like me, is quite a hard thing to do, be in the present and focus on just waking up every morning and focusing on this day. It's about being kind to ourselves. I mentioned it last time. Being kind to others, giving everybody the benefit of the doubt. I'm seeing people react in ways that they wouldn't normally react, being much more aggressive. Seeing people not picking up the phone the same and talking to someone rather than, because in the past they would have just walked across the room or arranged to have a cup of tea or a coffee. Now it's just an email or a message, which can get misinterpreted. And it's because we're all feeling that stress response. However much you think you're coping with this COVID crisis, there will be an element of you that isn't coping as well as you were. There's going to be an element of you that you can't understand why you're obsessing about something or why you are struggling to stay on top of what's going on in the world around you. That's okay. Take some time. Know who your friends are. Be kind. And know that we're going to come out of this all stronger and probably know ourselves a bit better. And if you can recognise any of the things that in yourself today that I've mentioned, start making a note of it. Note down, when you're being too much in the future. Note down when you're overcomplicating things, for those who are bigger picture. Those of you who are detailed, note down when you're obsessing too much. Note down when you're looking at the minutia. See what's triggering you as well. What's triggering you in your life that's making you look at those things. I hope that's useful, and I do apologise again for the technology hiccup right at the start. I'm not sure what was happening there. It kept kicking me out. Didn't want me to present today. So thank you so much. My name is Haulwen Nicholas, the Magical Mojo Coach, and I'm an ambassador for Psychology's magazine. So if you join the Psychology's Life Leap Club, this is for subscribers. You will get an online coaching club where you'll be supported and inspired by top coaches, experts and psychologists to help you create the life you really want. And by understanding your preferences, remember they're preferences, these aren't fixed, you can really understand how you're reacting to the world around you. I'm the author of the book of personality tests, and if you want to know more about me, please feel free to go to my Facebook page or my free Facebook group, which you can find in the links below. So thank you very much, and again apologies for the technical hiccup at the start, and I look forward to hearing from you all and how you are coping in this crisis. Take care. Bye.